All right, welcome folks. This is 27 Degrees, our angle on Google Workspace. My name is Troy, his name is Rowan, we're your hosts, and we are here to bring you all the latest updates, our go-to tips, and best insights as a Google Workspace partner working for SADA.
We couldn't be more thrilled to be bringing you a special episode focusing just on the benefits that Workspace can bring for the education sector. And again, we're going to be joined by special guests from Google.
For the first time on 27 Degrees, we're going to be joined by a customer from Virginia Commonwealth University. We have so much amazing content to squeeze into one episode. Let's jump right into it. Our first guest on today's episode began his career as a Fulbright Fellow in Spain, where he taught in a bilingual high school and organized community service programs. He then moved to Fort Worth, Texas, and taught dual language elementary school through Teach for America. In 2014, Drew began his Google journey, combining passions for education and technology and working with K-12 school districts to effectively deploy and utilize Google for Education solutions. Today, he leads a team that partners and collaborates with K-12 and higher education organizations across North America to leverage Google tools to positively impact the way students, faculty, and staff work and learn. We are absolutely ecstatic that Drew Sidel has chosen to join us for our education episode. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you so much for having me. Absolutely thrilled to be here.
Couldn't be more excited to be discussing the Google for Education solution. We've been discussing the impact of the pandemic now for over a year. And I think as now we return into the idea maybe that we can get back to some normality. But I do want to understand the sort of way that Google has stepped up and started to meet the evolving needs of the education sector. Can you maybe share some insight into that for us?
We definitely want to start by saying thank you. The education community has continued to impress us, to inspire us with creativity, resilience, and the ongoing commitment to serving students in and outside of the classroom. First and foremost, it was making sure that our tools stayed up and running so teaching and learning could continue, even when our tools were being used more than ever. We launched a tool called Google Assignments, which is built on LTI, or Learning Tools Interoperability, bringing so much of the magic that we had built in things like Google Classroom into existing learning management systems with all of the different Workspace for Education tools. And to ensure that educators and students globally could use Classroom, we launched 10 new languages. Even within Google Meet, we sprinted to launch 20 new features alone, including things like live streaming, breakout rooms, expanding translation with live translated captions, polls and Q&A to keep students more engaged during virtual and mixed learning environments. And at a high level, we saw Googlers really coming together in ways that we always do to solve big challenges to meet the needs of educators and students globally.
I'm lucky enough to have a high school teacher as a partner, and I live with her and got to witness her teaching this year from home for the first time, really leveraging Google Workspace for Education. Of all the tools that you just mentioned and all the tools that I saw her use this year, I think Google Meet was probably the most prevalent and the biggest change in her teaching day to day. Can you share a little bit more, Drew, on the evolution that Meet has gone through and the direction that Google for Education is taking that tool?
One, I want to say thank you to the high school teacher that you live with. We know it has not been easy for anyone, and especially for high school educators, keeping students engaged, obviously continuing to provide a great educational experience at scale, just a tremendous challenge. Without tools like Google Meet, that things like teaching and learning, collaborating, the ability to stay connected in that way without those tools was almost impossible. We did just release a refreshed user interface that should allow both educators and students to see their presentation content and the entire group at the same time. They can also easily do things like underpinning the presentation to see more of students on the call. And as well, another big requested item is that names will always be visible, so educators can quickly see and understand who's who, who's raising hands, who's speaking. We also recently announced that Meet will soon start supporting multiple hosts, making it easier for teachers to partner with other people helping manage a class. You'll be able to choose hosts in meetings, and all meeting hosts will have access to safety and security controls. And this feature will be rolling out in the coming months. And in the coming weeks, we're also going to be improving the hand-raising experience. Soon, individuals who raise their hands will show up in a grid, and there will be a persistent notification so that an educator can easily see how many individuals have raised their hands and in what order. And finally, when a student with a raised hand is done talking, we'll automatically lower their hand, helping to improve the facilitation and make that feel much more organic, even in these virtual and mixed environments.
It shows a consistent theme that we see often, which is the Google implement a feature, but then incrementally improve it over time based on user feedback. And that's a prime example of this in action. So fantastic stuff.
We're also tremendously excited about live translated captions. So soon, for educators with the Teaching and Learning Upgrade or Education Plus, we're introducing additional features to take engagement and inclusivity to the next level. So with how this works is with the presenter speaking in one language, you can see captions translated into another language in real time. And this will be helpful in multilingual classrooms and to facilitate meetings between educators and parents or guardians who might speak different languages. This feature should really help make those feel much more engaging and natural, but also help to ensure that things aren't lost in translation.
And I love that it speaks towards their principle of collaboration equity that they're working towards. Regardless of your role or your experience level, your location, your language, your device preference, none of that matters because of the technology and the features that Google are introducing, and anyone is able to collaborate and contribute.
You know, from a more personal note too, in Toronto, we live in one of the most multicultural cities in the world, and I know that this will be felt in a really positive way.
We also had recently introduced closed captions in additional languages. When we announced this, it was that soon these closed captions would support 5 additional languages to help people follow along and stay engaged. So in the next few weeks, these will have launched to people everywhere. So whether it's French, German, Portuguese in Brazil, or Spanish across both Spain and Latin America, these closed captions should help everyone to understand exactly what's happening in a meeting. The next update that we are also very excited to bring to market is public live streaming. So public live streaming will give educators and leaders the ability to live stream to anyone outside of their domain, making it easier to host events like school board meetings, school events like graduations, concerts, speakers. This is going to be launching in beta a little bit later this year.
Great. What else have you brought for us today?
Oh gosh, so much. One of the things that I was really excited to talk about with all of you is called Smart Canvas. This is one of the biggest announcements to Workspace in some time. Smart Canvas is not a product per se or a feature itself, but rather a new experience that should enhance collaboration. So one of the first is called Smart Chips. So this will allow you to pull in helpful information from other Google Workspace products while working in a document. If you're a student working on a group project, you can quickly embed files from Drive or tag other students in your group right into the document just by typing the @ sign. And once people are tagged, they can just hover over their name to quickly start a chat, an email, to set up a video call. We also recently added interactive checklists to Google Docs to help educators and students stay on track with whatever they're working on. So checklists are similar to bulleted lists, except that you can mark items once they're complete. As a former educator thinking about preparing for something like a unit review, we had so many checklists that I'd be working in together, or generally in paper, I'd be bringing other educators in to understand the progress that folks are making. And to think that this will happen now more naturally in Google Docs is really exciting for me personally. And then later this year, we'll be taking this even a step further, and educators with Education Plus will be able to do things like embedding their live Meet video calls into their docs, their sheets, and their slides.
Even as we move into a hybrid or mixed work environment, tools like this that allow us to stay connected when we're working from anywhere, be it the home, office, or any location that's appropriate, something that's really needed.
The next piece I'm going to be talking about is simplifying settings in Google Forms. They'll see a new Settings tab at the top of Forms with key settings made even more discoverable, like the option to make a form a quiz and control default settings that get applied to all of your forms and all of your quizzes. And one more piece that we are very excited about within Forms specifically is what's called autosave. So earlier this year, we announced that Forms would soon start to automatically save draft responses for a period of 30 days or until that submission was complete.
The depth and breadth of all the updates and news that you had to share with us today, Drew, that's exactly what we're looking for, in this partnership on 27 Degrees. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and show our viewers. We appreciate you coming on to answer some of those for us.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
That was really only a snapshot of our conversation with Drew. We actually got to speak at length about these many benefits and the many updates coming for Google Workspace for the education sector. So we'll be releasing some special segments in the coming weeks. Next up is our conversation with SADA and Google Workspace customer, Virginia Commonwealth University. Our next guests are joining us from the collaboration services team at a longtime SADA customer in Virginia Commonwealth University. Amanda Carlson has been working in higher ed for the last 18 years. She worked at both private and community institutions before joining the team at VCU in 2012 after achieving her master's in information systems there that same year. As the Deputy Director of Collaboration Services, Amanda helps manage all facets of VCU's Google Workspace tenants today. Connie Wetstein is the Director of Collaboration Services at VCU. She has been at VCU working with this team for 17 years. During her time there, she's been involved in not one, but two complete collaboration system migrations. Prior to VCU, Connie worked for the Virginia State Legislature, administering their Lotus Notes and Domino system. We are thrilled to be joined by these two highly experienced professionals in the education sector who know firsthand the impacts of a move to Workspace. Welcome to 27 Degrees, Amanda and Connie.
Thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
We're so pleased you agreed to join us in this second segment of the show. We always love to tell a customer story. So to actually have SADA customers come on and join us is exactly where we pictured the show going. I'll kick off our interview here. And when did that happen? When did you make the move to Workspace and what originally inspired that change?
We moved our students at VCU in 2008 to what was then Google Apps for Education. And then in 2012, we added our faculty and staff. And then 2020, we actually moved our faculty and staff to Google Workspace for Education Enterprise. What inspired us for the change? VCU Technology Services is moving everything toward cloud-hosted solutions. Google was one of our very early moves from on-premise servers to a hosted solution. And moving to Google just made sense. Our students had used Google. Many of them had personal Gmail accounts. So the transition for them was really easy and it was a no-brainer. They had been using the web-based version of Lotus Notes. We moved them very painlessly. Google gave us the free browser-based solution, the collaboration tools, which of course have just continued to grow and expand. Our team at the time had 56 on-premise Domino servers that we supported and client-based software for our faculty and staff. We were managing physical ID files. We were managing software installations across campus. Spent a lot of time troubleshooting, moving to the browser-based solution with Google. It was scary at first, but once we moved to Google, we've really never looked back. It gave my life back to me.
I wanted to know a little bit more about how you actually made the initial transition and how SADA maybe supported you in that transition as well.
Yeah, VCU worked really closely with SADA. Our students, like I said, they were easy. Our faculty and staff, it was a little harder sell for them. We started what we called the Gone Google campaign. SADA helped us. We developed a website, a Google site at the time. We kind of had a campaign. We had Gone Google t-shirts and lunch bags. We worked hand in hand with SADA to get them transitioned.
What sort of benefits have you experienced over that long journey that you've been on with Google?
Key is reliability. Google is always available. Google has added so many collaboration tools and improves and changes. And they just add, before you can think of features, they've added them. Everything is in Google Drive. We're sometimes all working in the same sheets at one time. Collaborating within one document is just a great feature. And Google Chat, the ability to have rooms, and so excited about what's coming next with Spaces. Those tools are just such great benefits.
I'm actually interested in how those tools and the rest of the platform impacted or had a role in the transition to remote teaching and learning.
We probably wouldn't have survived as well without the Google tools. It's enabled us to stay connected and collaborate. We've really relied heavily on shared drives. You were using, Google Groups to auto-populate some of those. So if someone joins a department or leaves a department, they're automatically added to that shared drive. We saw, about a 400% increase in Google Meet usage right at the start of the pandemic when we were all, shoved home. We ended up purchasing our enterprise licenses from SADA so we could continue to use those extended Meet features. We are starting a campaign. It's Chat, Meet, Collaborate. So, this is how our team works. on the daily, and it's almost like we're, in the same space.
You can tell that your team's very comfortable with leveraging chat. One of the things that we did in preparation for this guest interview today was we set up a room with Connie and Amanda and Rowan and myself. And right away, Connie and Amanda were jumping in with emoji reactions to our messages and letting us know that they were comfortable. What initiatives do you have planned next with Workspace for VCU?
We're going to integrate our Google assignments with our LMS. We are changing LMSs from Blackboard to Canvas, and so this fall we'll be all on Canvas when we were kind of split before. So, Canvas is the only LMS that is fully integrated with Google assignments right now. So this functionality really simplifies, the admin aspects. And we're also planning to use our Google Groups much more than we do now. We use them really frequently now, and we have, a lot of Google Groups. But we are hoping to transition off of our listserv and only use our Google Groups, and we're going to realize some cost savings because of that, when we get rid of our listserv.
I was in another staff meeting, and a member of the staff said, Connie, I've read about Spaces. They are, as a team using another tool, and they said, I see this as a rival to that, and it would be so great to just have that feature right within our workspace that we're at. And that's the thing, is having the Google Groups within the workspace, having the chat in the rooms / now Spaces is just, it just keeps everyone right within their Google Workspace where they can do everything.
I love that your organization's such a wonderful example of how you can adopt the Google tools and new functionalities over time. And you've been using the tools for over a decade, so you've really seen the benefits and some of the changes. You've reached this level of culture now where people are actually willing to accept and embrace change. Great to hear that your people are so engaged with new functionality coming down the road.
Thank you for sharing example after example of how Google can help. This conversation has been hugely beneficial to hear it directly from a customer and on behalf of Rowan and the team here at SADA. Just want to obviously say thank you so much for continuing to partner with us. Thanks for the conversation today. We'll be excited to continue working with you moving forward.
Thanks for having us.
Quick thanks again to Connie and Amanda for joining the show to share with us their journey from an on-premises server environment to the cloud with Google Workspace. If you're a SADA or Google Workspace customer and you have a story to share, please get in touch with your dedicated customer success manager or drop us a note directly to 27@sada.com.
And now we want to turn your attention to a tool that's Google specifically built to facilitate teaching and learning within Workspace. Please welcome our conversation with Sam Lieberman on all of the benefits within Google Classroom.
We are excited to be joined by our guest for the demo portion for this episode. A native New Yorker, she began her career in the public sector in DC before moving back to New York City in 2006, beginning her journey in education as Director of Operations for Uncommon Schools. Sam held multiple positions with the NYC Department of Education, directing teams in the Office of Teacher Effectiveness and Division of Instructional and Information Technology. With her valuable experience in both the private sector and public education, she is now Program Manager, Google for Education. Welcome, and thank you for joining us to discuss the power of Google Classroom, Sam Lieberman.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sam. We're delighted to have you on, and I'm also delighted to be discussing the Classroom tool. It really highlights a lot of the best aspects of Workspace and sort of pulls all the tools together into an education format. Can you maybe talk to us about some of those specific challenges that Classroom can solve and the ways in which it does?
Classroom is really built with educators in mind first. And so we are constantly hearing feedback, soliciting feedback, and putting that into our roadmap to design our next slate of features. So some of the specific challenges we hear about and Classroom specifically addresses, one is just ease of use. Educators have enough going on. They don't need complexity in tech tools. They need them to just work. Anyone can get started in minutes, and that's a huge part of the value prop. Another is bringing everything together in one place. A top digital learning challenge that's been reported is juggling too many different ed tech tools. Because Classroom is part of the broader Google Workspace set of tools, teachers can seamlessly use familiar applications like Gmail and Calendar, Meet, and Docs and Slides, etc. In addition, we're bringing even more content from across the ed tech ecosystem right into Classroom with Classroom Addons, coming to beta later this year for institutions with the Teaching and Learning Upgrade or Education Plus editions of Google Workspace for Education. Classroom add-ons will allow teachers to seamlessly bring their favorite content right inside of Classroom. We're starting out with 9 partners, which include Adobe Spark for Education, Book Widgets, CK12 Foundation, Edpuzzle, IXL, Kahoot, Nearpod, Newsela, and Safari Montage, with plans to expand to many more. There's so many great ed tech tools out in the space, and we will never be competition with all of it, but we can be the place where it all comes together.
I don't know if you saw me perk up when you said Kahoot. But as someone who's been using Kahoot in my professional career, super excited about that integration because it's just fun.
And I can show you how add-ons work with an example. We can take Book Widget here. First, as a teacher, I would go to create an assignment like I used to, fill out typical instructions. I might add some attachments, but this is where the add-on comes in. So you would select the add-ons button, open Book Widget, find an assignment, and assign it to your class. And so if we go over to the student view, the teacher has posted it and the student sees the assignment in the stream. They open the Book Widget app right within Classroom. They never have to leave Classroom or do any kind of separate sign-in. They just open the assignment, complete their work, and when they're done, they're going to hit Turn It In. And then it's going to go back to the teacher, who will see it on their side and is now ready to grade. Again, they're right in Google Classroom. They can click on the student name, see the student work, and grade in line and add comments in Classroom's usual grader view. And then that will automatically pass the grade back to Classroom's gradebook.
I love the automated aspect of that for sure. And in the hands of educators, I'm sure there will be all sorts of new use cases coming out for all of these add-ons.
Educator feedback really drives our roadmap. And there were a whole slate of announcements beyond Classroom updates and what Drew shared that we announced at the Anywhere School, and they're all summarized if you go to this link in blog posts across products.
So Sam, we know Classroom's been around for a little while, and when it was launched, it was one version of itself. And how has Classroom itself evolved to facilitate learning and connecting from anywhere?
Great question. So a lot is the short answer. As you mentioned, when Classroom first started, it really created in response to the fact that teachers had taken these free Google tools that are now, Google Workspace tools and started to kind of stitch together using them to support delivery of instruction without Classroom. And Classroom was made to be that tool that brought it all together and actually made it work for teachers. Now, today, over 150 million students and educators use Classroom worldwide, and that reflected a 300% increase in the number of users in 2020. I'll touch on 4 product updates that were really born of the need to teach and learn from anywhere. One is that in the next few months, we're going to release student engagement tracking in Classroom. This is a teacher view. It's going to be a new tab in Classroom at the top, Activity, where teachers will be able to see when a student was last active, including when they last submitted work or participated in class through comments.
Again, living with the teacher and seeing the struggle of trying to get a hold of students or even just have them speak up in a class and show their activity is a challenge. So I know sort of secondhand, I guess, the challenge that addresses, and I think it'll be really well received. It's all aimed at student success, right?
Absolutely. Another thing I'll highlight is that video conferencing will remain a critical tool for teaching and learning from anywhere for as long as there are, non-physical learning settings. And in the coming months, we're making some powerful updates to how teachers can use Meet in Classroom. So the first is creating a Meet link for the class course with this button on the left, where previously teachers had to go into the class settings to manage the Meet link, but now it's right on the stream where the teacher is already. Now, as a student, I'm unable to join the Classroom Meet unless the host or teacher is present. And that means students can't be in a meeting link unsupervised. But once the teacher joins, students can join automatically. And if the teacher joins first before students, they can join without needing to knock or sit in a waiting room. We do realize sometimes someone who isn't a teacher or a student needs to join the class. Perhaps it's a guest speaker joining for the day. So as long as they have the Meet link, they can knock and they'll be forced to ask to join so no unwanted participants can get into the class. When this launches, all co-teachers in the class will automatically be co-moderators. Only students listed in the roster will be able to join without knocking. One more I'll highlight is that as classroom serving, as we talked about, as a hub for all teaching and learning, it needs to support non-digital student work, which does still exist. One is coming soon is smart image capturing, which is going to allow students or guardians to photograph non-digital work and more easily submit it in classroom. Math problems, art, a handwritten journal, or anything else. And this feature supports combining multiple images into one submission. So if it's, say, multiple pages of a journal, and improving lighting because camera phones and lighting can sometimes need a little bit of help. Another one to highlight are offline capabilities for classroom. With offline mode, students can review assignments, open drive attachments, and even write assignments in Google Docs without an internet connection. And then when they come back online, their work will sync and be available to submit in classroom.
I love the focus to contribute to equity wherever possible. That seems to be really true across Workspace. Well, Sam, thanks so much for joining the program and walking us through Classroom. If you'd like to come back, we'd be happy to have you come back on 27 Degrees. It's been great.
Well, thanks so much. It's been awesome. Thanks for having me and the opportunity to share.
Absolutely fantastic discussion with Sam there, having to learn and teach remotely. I love to see Google continue their integration there and build upon that further. And I also love Sam's explanation of the vision of Google building the core platform, or where everything comes together, but also allowing integrations with third-party tools that can extend the functionality of Classroom.
That's it for another episode of 27 Degrees, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks to our amazing guests that joined us for today's show and this special look at the education sector. We really hope you enjoyed it. To stay up to date with all the latest episodes and all the other great content that SADA puts out around Google Workspace, head over to sada.com/cloudquarters. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. Can't wait to see you again in 2 weeks when we continue to bring you our angle on Google Workspace. We've got Virginia Commonwealth University, a SADA and Google Workspace customer, coming to the show to join us to
that you would.
Okay.
What's going on? You having a heart attack? Breathe. Breathe. His whole left side is shutting down.